Hello, my name is Jennifer Partridge, and this is my contrastive analysis of English and Italian languages. Here's an overview of the history of the Italian language. Italy was the birthplace of many of the Italo-Dalmatian branches of the European Romance languages. It remained politically fragmented for centuries. Its written language was Latin, with many vernaculars and dialects derived from Latin spoken all across the country. Institutionalization of a common literary language didn't come until the Florentine dialect of Dante Alighieri's comedy became the basis of the national literary language. In the 14th century, there was a rise in political, cultural, and economic power and in the excellence of Florence. So the majority of the land then adopted the characteristics of Tuscan dialects. The linguistic situation was still unresolved throughout the whole country without a unified language. During the fascist period up until 1943, there was still opposition to linguistic minority dialects and no uniform language throughout the country. After unification, a system of compulsory public education was introduced to streamline the country's language into modern Italian and educate the population of the country. Although there are still dialectical differences in regions of Italy, they are integrated enough to guarantee reciprocal comprehension and understanding within the national community of Standard Italian, which is spoken throughout the country. This is a map of all the different dialects across the country. Here are some facts about the Italian language in the country of Italy. Italian is one of the most spoken language in the European Union, with about 68 million people speakers there. Along with the country of Italy, it is spoken in San Marino, Vatican City, Switzerland, Slovenian Istria, Istria County in Croatia, Corsica, Monaco, Albania, and communities in the US, with over 700,000 people speaking Italian here. Another aspect of the Italian language is that composers used Italian to develop a system of musical notation, and that's why we still have Italian words within the current music notation system like a cappella, soprano, and tempo. Italian language and vocabulary has flowed into English as well, with words like grande, meaning large, and venti, meaning 20 or more than 20 ounces, because of people's fascination here as well as in Italy with coffee. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound created with letter or letter combinations. Here is a chart of the phonetical sounds in the Italian language, which has 21 letters and 5 vowels. Here are the phonemes: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, and Zeta. There's also a phoneme chart in English, comprised of 26 letters and 5 vowels, and the combinations of singular letters or groups of letters to create the sounds and phonemes in English. Italian has 21 letters and 5 vowels. If the letters K, W, X, or Y appear in words, that shows that they have been borrowed from another language into Italian. There are only 32 phonetic sounds used in Italian. English has 26 letters and 5 vowels. All the letters are used, but there are many words borrowed from other languages as well. English has 44 phonetic sounds used. An example of a difficulty that an Italian speaker learning English might have with phonemic awareness, for example, words like shoe, sugar, ocean, and nation use the sh sound with the 2 letters S and H, but they're spelled in various ways in English with the letters SH or S or C or TION representing the same sound. Italian learners would struggle with pronouncing and hearing these words in English because in their Italian language, spelling matches the sound phonetically to the letters. English does not. Italian has 5 vowel sounds, 2 diphthongs, and in different regions, they don't always distinguish between the open and closed vowel sounds as in English. Also, a great many words with more than one syllable end in vowels that stress pronunciation on the penultimate or last syllable. For example, Marco parla italiano e inglese. In English, Marco speaks Italian and English. Another example would be the letter H. It's always silent in Italian, so you never pronounce it, even in foreign words like hotel. In between the letters C and G and the vowels E and I, the H helps to make a hard sound. That means that you say the C as in K and a G with a guttural sound. For example, chiave, which is key, che means that, Gepardo is cheetah, and ghiaccio is ice. Sometimes the letters C and G get a soft sound instead of a hard sound. This happens when they're followed by the vowels E and I, as in the word cento, which is 100, Cina, which is China, genere, which is gender, and gita, which is trip. Morphology is the study of the smallest word parts that have meaning. These charts show examples of morphemes in English. We have free morphemes, which can stand alone as their own word. We have bound morphemes, both derivational and inflectional, which cannot stand alone. For example, free morphemes used for content or function words, such as boy, girl, idea, or car. These morphemes can stand alone or free for meaning, don't have to be part of a larger expression for meaning in speaking or writing. Bound morphemes cannot stand alone to have meaning in words. An example of a bound morpheme can be the derivational morphemes such as prefixes and suffixes, which are attached to a root word. For example, un, non, in, or pre, as in words such as untie, nonsense, inside, or pre-test. Bound inflectional morphemes such as s, apostrophe s, ing, or ed can be part of words with words like toys or mothers, running, or walked. One of the biggest differences between English and Italian is the word gender. Nouns can be masculine or feminine. It's crucial that you know the gender of a noun because all the related words must agree with the gender. For instance, in this phrase, il tetto è rosso, which means the roof is red, the word tetto is masculine, and therefore the article il and the adjective rosso are in their masculine form as well. English speakers learning Italian need to know the article to know the gender of the noun, yet Italian speakers learning English may struggle with nouns in English and their agreement of needed suffixes and affixes because English does not have gender agreement. Some other morphological features are verb conjugation in Italian. Another difference between English and Italian is in the verbs. In Italian, the conjugation of the verbs is somewhat complex compared to English, and this is probably one of the biggest challenges for students. In Italian, the verb endings change based on who's talking. In Italian, that happens for each pronoun in all of the verb tenses. In English, it only is changed in the simple present tense for singular subjects like he, she, or it, which require an S at the end of the word, such as he walks to the store. Syntax is the arrangement of words and phrases in a certain order to form meaningful sentences. One major difference in syntax that learners struggle with between Italian and English is forming questions. In English, when you ask a question, you use a different structure than when you answer or say something. You can easily recognize the request from a statement based on how the words are placed in the sentence or from the use of an auxiliary verb, do or does. Such as this sentence, does she live here? You can clearly see it's a question. It is definitely different from she lives here, which is a statement. But in Italian, words don't change their position in questions, and you recognize that someone is asking you something mainly from intonation. The way you ask if she lives here is "Lei vive qui?" and the phrase doesn't change if you are telling this information instead. "Lei vive qui?" Another feature of syntax would be singular versus plural nouns. In Italian, singular nouns ending in O or A change to I or E, and singular nouns ending in E change to I. For example, amico is changed to amici in English, which means friend or friends. Torta is changed to torte in English, which is a cake or cakes. Professore is changed to professori in English, which is professor or professors. In Italian, there are definite articles, il, which is masculine, and la, which is feminine. They're used in conjunction with singular nouns, lei or e or gli, which are used with plural nouns. All must agree in gender and number as opposed to English, which doesn't need gender agreement. There are also indefinite articles, which un or una, which are used and do have to agree with masculine or feminine nouns. In English, it would be the articles a, an, or the used with nouns and would not have any syntax rules to follow for gender agreement. Both English and Italian follow an SVO sentence structure or subject, verb, and object. But in Italian, adjectives have a special position in the order of the sentence, depending on what the speaker is saying. Some adjectives precede the noun, as in sentences in English that are arranged, but most adjectives follow after the nouns. For example, la macchina rosa, the red car. There are 7 different kinds of adjectives that precede the noun in Italian, such as demonstrative, comparative, superlative, possessive, ordinal, interrogative, and indefinites when written or spoken in Italian. Semantics is the meaning of specific words and sentences. Here are some possible issues with misinterpretation. Word meanings that spread between the 2 languages, words that are borrowed from other languages, which create problems with meaning and misinterpretation for some speakers. Many Italians believe it would be wise to limit the number of words that are incorporated into Italian from English and other languages. For example, words such as babysitter, weekend, display, or manager all have Italian equivalents like bambina, fine settimana, schermo, and dirigente. Indiscriminate use of English in the Italian language does not only complicate communication, but also becomes a source of uncalled for challenges for those who are expected to use those expressions. Because Italian is a Romance language, there are issues with transferring of cognates also. Words that look similar and transfer from Italian to English, so speakers think they have the same meaning and cause confusion and misinterpretation. Pragmatics speaks about how context contributes to meaning when speaking. A handshake with direct eye contact and a smile suffices between strangers who are Italian speakers. Italian speakers usually wait until they're invited to move onto a first name basis. After the relationship is developed, ear kissing on both cheeks, starting with the left, is often added. Italian speakers are direct and clear. So if someone wants to say no, they have no qualms with just using the word no. Italians can sometimes get very loud. What seems like an argument between people is usually just an exuberant debate over politics or sports rather than something serious. In school situations, teachers address parents as signore or signora, which is Mr. and Mrs., as a title of respect and admiration. Italians use frequent gestures when having discourse with friends and family to illustrate their point when they're speaking. Some possible misinterpretations between Italian and English speakers. English speakers use word and sentence stress in order to draw your attention to the most important words in the sentence. Italians learning English should listen for the syllables in those words that are longest or loudest and at the highest pitch. If students call a teacher teacher, that is because in Italian they use the word for teacher, which is professora, professori. During conversations, Italian speakers tend to not always be direct and to their point. They may include many rhetorical details. These details shouldn't be discounted as unimportant, though. In English, personal opinions are generally understated, whereas Italian speakers tend to purposefully exaggerate when making statements and speaking. At times, children or students may seem disengaged and as if they are not paying attention. This can be misinterpreted as disrespectful, yet this is a normal aspect of conversation for them, and they may feel embarrassed if questioned by a teacher for inattention. Using rhetorical logic to come to a point is considered to be appropriate when in context of conversation for them. Some implications for teachers of possible difficulties Italian learners may have learning English. Italian speakers learning English can say teacher instead of the teacher's name, but in Italian, the word for teacher is professora e professori. Students also struggle with false cognates between the two languages. For example, conveniente sounds like convenient, yet they are both two different words. Educazione and pedagogia are two different words. Argomento and discussione sound like the word argument and yet have two very different meanings. Students may also struggle with determining syllables in English because word segmentation is much harder to hear and determine in English. To help with this, they may find the use of a dictionary to be a support. Here are some other implications for teachers. Italian has 9 different prepositions compared to English, which has at least 100. Learners may leave them out during speaking or writing as they are learning. Italian has a phonetic spelling system. Therefore, Italian speakers may have problems with spelling English words that they hear and speaking words they read because English words do not always conform to letter sound correlation. For an example, in English, the word live can mean I live in Rhode Island, or changing the pronunciation, that was a live concert. Italian speakers would tend to say those words in a singular pronunciation pattern and be confused as to the meaning as well. In Italian, the word ridadela means giggle in English. It's pronounced exactly as the letters are written with letter sound correspondence. Some examples of cultural norms for Italian speakers. Italy is a collectivist society. They promote relationships and interdependence with a community. They value cooperative learning. Italian-speaking communities in other countries may also adopt these cultural patterns and values while they're speaking Italian. Because of this, Italian speakers from an Italian culture might view education in that their relationships are built on trust and built slowly to become stable. Students from this culture may view teachers as having a position of power and formal authority, and having control over rewards and punishment and information. There are different communication styles for Italian speakers. They are usually fast, loud, energetic, with loud tones in many different situations. They speak formally around strangers and informally once their relationships have been established. Their use of proper and formal titles such as signore, signora, signorina with younger females. The speakers take turns in general, but depending on the conversation topic, speakers may tend to talk over one another. Colorful rhetoric is very common, using stories to illustrate a point in conversation. Speakers of Italian will try to avoid direct confrontation or conflict, but saying no to something that's asked isn't considered confrontational, but it's accepted as being direct and just being honest. In their nonverbal behavior, Italian speakers tend to keep an arm's length distance from someone who is unknown. They feel that it's an important step to have in personal space. It is common for Italian speakers to have frequent gentle touching when they're talking. Gestures are very common during conversation and have meanings to contribute to conversation. And direct eye contact and courtesy is very important in the Italian language. These are some considerations for teachers to be aware of when there are Italian language learners in their classrooms. Italian-speaking students learning English may treat their teachers just like their parents, with a respectful and honor attitude. There are maybe occasions when they won't make eye contact with teachers simply out of respect. They could possibly use light touching with their peers during class time conversations or group work as a reflection of their cultural norms. They may also be prone to interrupt conversations once they feel comfortable and they have established relationships with the peers in their classroom. To facilitate Italian-speaking students to be able to acclimate and become involved in schoolwork and learn their second language of English, there are many different strategies and tips that teachers can use to engage successfully with these language learners using collaborative groups with many different opportunities for conversation, such as partner readings, turn and talk activities, think, pair, share. This will support Italian-speaking students because of their level of comfort with these methods of learning from being raised with their cultural norms and communication styles. If possible, home visits and parent volunteers and interactions within the school community would benefit Italian speakers. Providing and using translation and communication services, things like Google Voice, the Kinvo app, possibly Class Dojo, just to name a few of them. Also, gentle reminders from the teacher to students to respect each other's personal space and giving that wait time during group conversations instead of talking over others. That's all for the presentation. Thank you very much for listening.